Okay. All right. Okay, well, I see I have all of 2 participants, but at least that's somebody. It's 2 more people than I knew I had. Welcome to the webinar on the District Board Candidates Education Session. I hope this gives you an opportunity to find out more about running for the District Board. I have my suspicions that the people to whom I'm speaking are Quay and Alex, and if that's the case, well, thanks for joining me while we go on. So let's start with, I seem to be having some kind of slide issue here. Let me see if I can remedy that situation. All right. So I'm trying to go to my next slide, which is the introduction slide. Which is not working out too well. Okay, minor technical issue. Screen share. Application window. Candidates education session. Share. Resume. Slideshow. All right. I'm going to believe that everybody can hear me unless somebody sends me a text telling me otherwise. So in this session, you'll have an opportunity to become familiar with the elected positions and campaign procedures, and maybe get to know your fellow board members. Of course, these slides were developed for an in-person session, and so I'm providing them online for the purpose of providing more access to more students in case you were unable to attend an in-person session. But that's still an opportunity for some access. So here's our first survey, and I guess my way of testing to see whether anybody's actually listening. So if you could respond to this poll and tell me how long you've been in Circle K. Is it less than 1 academic year, between 1 and 2 academic years, or more than 2 academic years? So I'm going to give you a minute to answer this poll and see what happens. Okay. Resume slideshow. I'm getting no responses, which leads me to believe that nobody is getting this at all. So let me just check with my technical person here and see where we are. Google Hangouts. Okay. We're doing a technical check on the state of things here. Okay. Okay. Joseph, thank you for your message. If the slides aren't working, we'll just go ahead and we'll count on that. So moving then to slide 4, let's deal with the question of why to be on the district board. So the reason to be on the district board is an opportunity to take on a whole new level of responsibility. And in this life, you will face an opportunity to be a manager, a supervisor, a parent, you know, maybe a life partner of some kind. And all of those things require some skills and maturity. And one of the ways to develop the emotional and leadership maturity is by taking on roles that stretch you, that take you to a new place and require you to uh, try new things. And so the district board is an opportunity to do that at a level that is probably beyond other experiences you've had in your life. What's important to keep in mind is that you are here to provide support services for the clubs. And if the clubs aren't successful, then there's not a lot of point in being on a district board. And so really the purpose of being on the district board isn't to prove that you're more important than everybody else, but in fact to take on that additional challenge. Now, one of the things that you have a responsibility to do in your role as a servant leader is to ensure the success of people at the club level in different kinds of roles and positions. And we're going to talk about that as we go on. But probably in your club, you've done some kind of thing, organizing some kind of activity, or you've chaired an event, or or you've kept the books, or you've filled out the monthly report forms. And this is an opportunity to do things on a bigger scale and also to look critically at what other people do and think about it. And when I say look critically, I don't mean negatively. I mean look critically at what some clubs do that are great ideas, and recognize that some of those things should be duplicated, or recognize that some things that may be unique to the institution. For example, the UC Berkeley Circle K used to have a plan, maybe they still do this, where everybody had to walk to the big C. Well, that works at Berkeley, but it doesn't necessarily work in other places. And it's an opportunity to make new friends and reach out farther, so that's all good. Let's move on then to slide number 5. And if you can, take this poll. If not, we'll wait and see. This poll, the question asked is, what's your favorite service project? And we'll take a minute to see. And somebody can tell me whether or not, somebody can tell me, send me a text and tell me yes, it works, or no, it doesn't work. And that's fine. So let's move then to slide 6, which is what are the elected positions. So the elected positions are in front of you, and you may have been in Key Club or in Key Winds. And in Key Club and Key Winds, typically they will have a conclave where they elect a lieutenant governor locally a month or two in advance of the district convention. And part of that is about getting parental permission to run for the offices, and also about getting them to come to the convention early for training and education. In Circle K, we elect all the lieutenant governors on site at the district convention, and part of that is because our divisions are already so big that it makes it difficult for people to get together. In addition to that, we have a drop-down procedure, and so the combination of those two things means that we elect the 3 district-wide positions, which is governor, secretary, and treasurer at the district convention, as well as the lieutenant governors division by division. The international positions are not elected at all at the district convention. However, during the district convention, a student who wants to seek endorsement from the district may caucus. So what happens is, if you want to be endorsed by the district, you submit an application for candidacy, and you don't have to submit the service agreement to me because that's an international thing, but that puts you in line for a caucusing slot. In order to get endorsed by the House of Delegates, you must caucus, and you must get at least 2/3 of the vote of the House. So let's just say that there are 100 people in the House of Delegates. That would mean you'd need at least 67 votes to have the endorsement. Sometimes people won't get the endorsement. They still run for office and they still win. So it's not the be-all and end-all of the world. Sometimes somebody will not get an endorsement because they haven't pursued it at the district convention, and they may pursue an endorsement from the district board. Sometimes they may not get an endorsement at all and just run, and that's fine. So the international offices positions are only involved for purposes of endorsement at the district convention. For each of the positions, there's a slightly different voting scenario. So the elected positions of governor, secretary, and treasurer are elected district-wide. That means that everybody in the House of Delegates votes for those positions. That means each club's representatives, which is 2 per club, as well as all of the voting board members. So the voting board members on the existing board, that's a total of 12 people, also vote in each of those district-wide elections. The voting board members then, because they're serving as delegates at large, will then also vote in the election for their respective divisions for lieutenant governor. So for example, for the position of Magic Kingdom lieutenant governor, in addition to each set of club representatives, Jesus Pelayo and Alex, will also vote in those elections, whereas Eric will vote in the Metro Lieutenant Governor election, and Donald will vote in the Golden Gate Lieutenant Governor election. But also the lieutenant governors from those clubs. So that's the cadre of people. Going to the next slide then, slide 7. These are the generally appointed positions. The bylaws specify standing chair positions which must be appointed, and then the governor may make other appointments as he's fit. So the appointed positions can be changed up and done different ways, and they may, and that's up to the next governor with the consultation of the district administrator. There is not an unlimited number. Generally speaking, the board is limited to 20 year-long positions for the appointed positions. And that's because the Kiwanis District Foundation helps pay for some of the expenses, and so it's actually a budgetary item. So since the Kiwanis District Foundation pays for expenses traveling to 3 board meetings, we have that limit on it as a general proposition. Now, just because a particular position has done a certain kind of work doesn't mean it always has to be that way. For example, a couple years ago, Hayoon was responsible for publishing The Sunburst, but this last year it was a member of the Public Relations Committee who was responsible for being the publications editor for the Sunburst. So that the Kiwanis family chair could be the person who is responsible for the District Professional Development Conference, or maybe that could be the Membership Development and Education chair. So there's plenty of room for doing it different ways, and as long as it's reasonable and appropriate, and something that the person who's taking it on can agree to. Moving then to slide 8. These are the key roles for a lieutenant governor. And probably the most important thing a lieutenant governor does is provide support to her clubs. And in providing a support to her clubs, she needs to make sure that they have recruiting in place, that they have retention programs in place, that they have a good, healthy Circle K program that's up and operational, and to the extent that they need additional support, whether it is additional education or help from other clubs or information about the rules or whatever those might be, that's what the lieutenant governor does, and also serves as a voting member of the board. In serving as that voting member of the board, the lieutenant governor has to take into account the interests of his constituency as well as the interests of the district as a whole. The other thing that the lieutenant governor does that's kind of a major thing is the relationship with Kiwanis, Key Club, Kiwin's counterparts, because that's part of how we develop and maintain Kiwanis family relations over the course of the years. So there will be all kinds of divisions that are included within a Circle K division. It isn't physically possible to go to every Kiwanis family DCM within a Circle K division just because of the sheer number of them, but it's important to be around regularly, communicate regularly and professionally and appropriately, and respect some of the rules regarding minors and the Kiwanis Youth Protection Guidelines. Finally, the lieutenant governor has a regional advisor, and a number of Circle K clubs don't necessarily have a heavy presence of an advisor, but when we're involved with things at a district level, there are all kinds of opportunities for creating more significant liability and financial exposure. And so The regional advisor is there to help provide support to the lieutenant governor, provide a little history and background, relationships with the sponsoring Kiwanis clubs, and to that end, the student who serves as a lieutenant governor must be in regular communication with the regional advisor. Going then to slide 9, the secretary's essential duties are there before you, and I think one of the most important things is the mysteries of the monthly report form, because a lot of people come into being club secretary and the tags and all of that can be quite confusing. So it's an opportunity to help somebody learn how to mark things, and which will help the club in the long term. And so that's a day-to-day responsibility in terms of a relationship with the club secretaries. But the secretary also has a significant charge on behalf of the whole district, and that is that the bylaws and the district operating procedures call for the secretary to send out key notices. For example, notice of a board meeting, to put together the board packet. The board packet involves the reports of activities of all of the board members, as well as any proposals for board actions. And so typically those board packets involve 150 to 200 pages of material. And it's not that the secretary writes all that information, but the secretary has to get all of those reports and everything in from all the other board members and then assemble them in a package of information that's placed in an order that tracks with the agenda, and get it sent out at least a week ahead of the board meeting. And so there are these crunch times that happen for the secretary in terms of being ready for board meetings, and of course taking minutes at the board meetings and producing those minutes. The secretary is advised by me as the district administrator, and so we have a weekly phone call, and the secretary also has a vote on the board. Going to slide 10, then you have the treasurer's essential duties. And one of the things that the treasurer has to do is hunt people down for money. And there's two kinds of money. There's the money in terms of dues, and there's money in terms of district fundraising initiatives. So the treasurer serves as the chair of the District 5 FunCom, which is the Finance and Fundraising Committee, and is responsible for promoting the district fundraising initiatives. In addition to that, next January, the district treasurer will be responsible for submitting to the board a proposal for the fundraising initiatives for the following year. So those are adopted in January. One of the hard things, I think, for the treasurer is a fairly constant stream of auditing of who's attending district events and whether they're dues paid members. And so when somebody comes to a district event, he's supposed to be a dues paid member, and we need to double check that against the membership update center. And so the treasurer has to do a lot of work along those lines, including following up with people about getting who haven't submitted their information. But in addition to that, the treasurer needs to help the clubs with doing the membership update center at all. So it's not that hard a system, but it may or may not be intuitive, helping somebody work through how to go online, how to put together their roster, how to delete the graduating seniors, print out the invoice and get it sent in. Those are all key things for the treasurer to do. So moving to slide number 11, we then have what the governor needs to do. And essentially with the governor is responsible for making sure everything goes. So I've had governors who found themselves in the middle of the night putting together artwork for souvenirs. I've had governors in the clutch of a district large-scale service project trying to make sure that all the pieces work, or and that's the governor's job, is to make sure that everyone else does her job and follow through in a timely manner. And that also includes, but the governor's job also includes a certain amount of schmoozing. So it's a technical term, schmoozing, but in this case, the governor goes to the Kiwanis mid-years and the Kiwanis conventions and has a relationship with the Kiwanis governor and the Key Club governor and the Key Winds governor, as well as their district administrators. The rules of the Kiwanis district are that the Kiwanis governor-elect is the one who has the authority over the service leadership programs from the time of their convention. So that way, the Kiwanis governor-elect works with the same board for a whole year. So Alex has had the chance to work with Pete Edwards from the time he was governor-elect until as he leaves office. And the Kiwanis governor-elect right now is Joni Ackerman. And so the new governor and the new board will have an opportunity to work with her. The Kiwanis governor positions and all the Kiwanis office positions change over on the 1st of October, as opposed to the Circle K positions, which turn over on the 1st of April. And so we do this, but they also know that they're elected more than a year ahead of time, unlike Circle K, where you get elected and now suddenly you're the club president. So we try to help Circle Kers by having somebody for the whole year. So let's take another shot at a poll here and see if it works. Try the next slide and see if we get a slide anywhere, if we get any kind of poll action. I am receptive to a text or email from any listening Circle K-er who wants to tell me that's working or not working. So, not necessarily. All right. So let's go on to slide 13 then, and talk about time commitments. So one of the things that you really want to take into account is how this fits in with the rest of your life, because I used to practice law full-time. Now I'm a full-time faculty member, and there are ebbs and flows that come with life, whatever those may be for you. And you know that you're going to have certain kinds of academic commitments. You're going to have certain kinds of family commitments or maybe travel commitments. And you need to know how those fit in with the position that you're undertaking. Typically, the chair positions have quite a bit of work between the district officer training conference at the end of April and the board meeting in July, as they put together a bunch of proposals. And the lieutenant governors in that time period, from the end of district convention to May, are busy with club visits. So that tends to be their particular challenge. In the fall, the lieutenant governors tend to be very busy helping with recruiting and that sort of stuff, whereas the chairs might be busier with counseling or preparing events that have already been planned. So it's a good idea to talk to the person who's presently in the position that you are interested in and talk about the workload and the timing that it goes with. Because if you're planning on taking, say, the LSAT in June, you're not going to have much time available between decon and June because you're going to be busy studying for the LSAT. You might think about how that fits in, and because school should always come first, there's no doubt about that. And you need to put things like families and jobs and all of those things in place as well. So you need to take into account how those positions, how that's going to work out. For example, because you will have a Kiwanis advisor of some kind, you will have to have regular communication with that Kiwanis advisor, and generally speaking, Kiwanians don't want to have a 2 a.m. phone call. So that's something that you need to take into account. So moving to slide 14, these are some of the key dates that we already know about. If you're interested in running for governor, there's a trip to Indiana with me. Woohoo! We have a training conference. Key Club and Key Winds, we will be doing Sergeant at Arms, but that's there's not an open permission to attend that. It needs to be tied back to working the Sergeant at Arms, or in the case of the Key Club convention, having signed up for the College Expo. The district officer training conference is for everybody on a year-long position. So that would be the year-long chairs as well as the voting board members. We will go to Rancho Cucamonga, which is, and the office is at the Kiwanis Professional Center, which is about 10 minutes from the Ontario airport. We will go have dinner starting at 6 o'clock on Friday night, and we will be pretty busy until Sunday afternoon about 4 or 5. So that's a whole weekend spent setting goals and getting to know each other. The first weekend in May, Saturday will be at Davis. There will be a spring training conference, and Sunday will be at Cal State Fullerton. The spring training conferences you're expected to attend, but you're only expected to attend the one in your region. The exception being, the governor, the secretary, and the treasurer. The district budget has travel money set aside for those 3 people to be able to go from north to south on Saturday night. So it doesn't matter whether you're from north or from south. For either of those, the travel will work out and be covered. It's a good idea to put the CKI of X event on your calendar. We're going to go at the same time as Key Club, so we're having a joint international convention with Key Club. That registration is already open, and the early registration closes. I'm afraid the date escapes me at the moment, but it's a good idea to put that on your list of things to do. If you have the idea that you can drive to San Antonio, Texas, the answer is you can, but it's probably going to take you 2 days. It's not a good idea to just get in your car and drive for 24 hours. It's not even safe. And so if you're making a road trip out of it, then you need to plan the time that goes with that. We can anticipate the summer board meeting and the president's retreat in the last couple weekends of July, or the July 14th weekend and the July 21st weekend for those 2 activities, and those should also be on your list of things to do. Now, the Kiwanis District Convention is in Reno. Generally speaking, you would need permission to attend, but if the board decides to sponsor a district professional development conference, then it'll be tied to that. And in that case, you do need to stay at the hotel, which is the Nugget. And we can anticipate that the board will want to sponsor the crazy competition for infants north and south. You're expected to go only to the one in your region, either north or south, and those dates get set depending upon park availability after the district treasurer has gotten things up and running and been able to research them. The fall training conference will still be in Sonora because that's the only camp we can find that works. And then there'll be a winter board meeting, which is still a little tentative because there are some other dates that need to be set yet by Kiwanis that may impact that. Now, slide 15 was supposed to be for time spent with the retiring board, and I'm going to use it for this purpose. It really, really doesn't make sense to seek out one of these positions without talking to the person who's presently occupying it, because you really lose out on understanding what might be involved and that sort of thing. So you really make a point of reaching out. Each one of the board members is precluded from appearing to or actually endorsing any particular candidate. And so that each board member has a responsibility to provide even-handed information to anybody who inquires about the position and what goes into it, and they've made a commitment to do that. So you should feel free to make those inquiries and make sure you take the time to do that. So I'm guessing that the poll on slide 16 isn't going to work, and we'll go to slide 17 and talk about running for office. So in running for office, generally speaking, there are some parameters. So there's a code of ethics that's posted online, and you need to read the code of ethics and pay close attention to it. Any campaigning of any kind by you or anybody on your behalf may cause you to be disqualified. And so it's important that you not engage in campaigning in advance. The one thing that you are allowed to do by the code of ethics is to send out notice of your candidacy. And the way that, and you might say, how do I do that without campaigning? And the answer is, you may take a copy of your application for candidacy and distribute it to any clubs that are eligible to vote for your position. So if you're running for Lieutenant Governor of Metro, you can't send your application for candidacy to everybody in the district, but you can send it to all the clubs in Metro. If you want to get an endorsement from for your position, you're only allowed to get that endorsement from your home club. You are not allowed to seek endorsement in advance of the convention from your division or any board members or Kiwanis family. One of the things that you want to keep in mind is that you should get some friends to help you. So friends to help you should generally be limited to 1 to 2 people when you're running for lieutenant governor, no more than 3 to 5 if you're running for a district-wide position. And the purpose of that is to help you have a plan for what it is you're promising that you'll do, to help you develop your campaign materials, and have you practice for caucusing. So your campaign materials can be submitted by February 18th to me, as it says on the application form. And if you submit those by February 18th, then 2 important things happen. One is that you get your name pre-printed on the ballot. So if you submit your application, your verification of enrollment, and your service agreement, your name will be pre-printed on the ballot. If you submit your campaign materials at by that same date, then those will be printed in a booklet. So when you submit the materials for purposes of campaign, for pre-printing on the ballot, that's an advantage because it makes it easier for somebody to vote for you when they don't have to add your name. Now, it doesn't mean you can't run. If you don't submit your materials by then, you can still run up until as long as you come to the candidates meeting and get a caucus slot and actually caucus, then you may still run for the position. On the campaign materials, if you submit them for the booklet, then that's all you get to submit and you can't hand out any others. On the other hand, the district will pay for that and you don't have to pay for that. If you choose to do your campaign materials separately, then that's on your nickel. There is no specific finance limit, but if you spend too much money, people will see that as spending too much money. At least it's been my experience that has a tendency to backfire. And distribute those. So you can make your choice which way you want to distribute your campaign materials. Now, the paperwork that's required to run for office. Oh, so you don't have to have any campaign material at all. It's kind of foolish, but if you but you can do that. But in order to run for office, you must submit 3 things. You must submit an application And the application has to be signed by people verifying that you're actually a dues paid member in good standing of your club. You must therefore be from a club that's in good standing, and a club that's in good standing is paid dues with the minimum membership requirements for the size of the institution, which would be 10 or 15. You must submit a signed service agreement, and the service agreement is for the particular position, and what it does is it's a commitment that you will perform the duties that you're running for. It's essentially a contract that says, yes, I understand this is what I'm doing and I will run for it. And the third thing that you have to submit is a verification of enrollment. A verification of enrollment is not the same as a transcript. So a transcript is a blow-by-blow account of your academic history with all of your grades. And while interesting, is not necessary. What you have to do is submit something that shows that you're enrolled in at least 6 units at the time that you're running for office. So if you got to the convention and spontaneously decided to run then, you might not be able to come up with your verification of enrollment, in which case your election is contingent upon producing that within a week. If you produce it within a week, then that's fine. If you don't produce it within a week, then it's position's declared vacant and somebody else gets appointed. Obviously, it makes more sense to get the stuff in advance. Most students go through the National Student Clearinghouse because they can go online to the National Student Clearinghouse, download a PDF with a watermark on it, the verification of enrollment. It makes it easy to send to me. If you're interested in a chair position, if you get appointed by the governor, at the time you get appointed by the governor, you then submit a verification of enrollment and sign a service agreement to perform those duties. So those are the mechanics of it. That material can be submitted digitally, and once it's submitted digitally, then I will review it and send you back a confirmation. Quaig is the elections chair, and so she'll get the information in order to prepare all the ballots and good stuff like that, as well as the candidate booklet. So that material is due on the 18th, which is, in fact, this Saturday. If you send it digitally, then you must send a hard copy by regular mail and postmark it at the same time. We're going to pause briefly because my cat is wailing in the background, and I'm going to shut the door. Poor kitty. She had a week-long medical treatment recently, and she's still pulling herself together. So moving on then to slide. Oh, there were 2 other things I wanted to mention. One of them is that when you get to the House of Delegates, somebody who's a seated delegate must nominate you. So if you're seated in the House of Delegates, you can nominate yourself if you want. That's fine. If you're, let me just say, tactically speaking, I think it makes a lot more sense to have somebody else nominate you. Makes you, otherwise you look like a party of one. So it's a good idea to have somebody nominate you. Some people want the nomination to be from someone who's known you a long time and can speak to your credentials. Other people want to have a nomination by someone from another club as a way of showing a breadth of support. So that's up to you. You can make whatever call you want. But if you don't have somebody nominate you in the House of Delegates, then nobody can vote for you. So you must remember to do that. You also have to keep in mind that that nomination can't be by anybody who's a current district board member, because that also would be an endorsement. They have a responsibility of neutrality. So you'll need to figure out who's going to be a seated delegate and then plan accordingly. Moving on then to slide 18, we'll talk about caucusing. So in caucusing, part of what you have to do is, and that would be slide 18. Part of what you have to do is be accountable to your potential constituency. So when you're doing your caucusing, things that you have to keep in mind is that you're going to have to stand up in front of a large group of people and introduce yourself. And you can introduce yourself, or you can have someone introduce you. If you have someone introduce you, it should be someone who knows you well enough to speak intelligently about you, and talk about why she's supporting you. This should involve something that relates to your qualifications. So if you stand up and say, I'm really good at the bunny hop, while that's moderately amusing, it raises some serious questions about whether that's purposes of your qualifications. You should expect to speak a little bit. Now, if you're not comfortable with public speaking, one of the things to do with your campaign committee is practice speaking in front of them, so that you can get used to speaking with people looking at you. You do not have to give a speech. You do not have to be introduced. You can just stand up and say, hi, I'm a candidate for district treasurer or whatever, and let them ask their questions. However, that's tactically not such a good idea because it raises some serious questions about your preparedness. Some people have stood up and said, I'm here to serve. I've heard people say this. I'm here to serve you, therefore I have no speech. I'm here to answer your questions or listen to what you have to say. These are tactical decisions that you get to make on your own. On Friday night, we will caucus everybody who's a candidate, and so that could be into the wee hours of the night. On Saturday morning, generally speaking, the caucus is only for the second caucus for the governor, secretary, and treasurer. So lieutenant governors caucus once, and the governor, secretary, and treasurer candidates caucus twice. As a general proposition, now that doesn't mean that, on Friday night at midnight somebody can't decide to run for governor and then have two caucuses on Saturday morning, but it has the effect of lacking credibility because it looks like you didn't really think it through and prepare, and it also messes up the rest of our convention schedule. So that's something to keep in mind. When you're answering questions, one of the things you're entitled to do is decline to answer any question. You can provide an explanation why you're answering it, or not provide an explanation. That's completely up to you. The caucus leaders will be there to ensure that the questions are appropriate and relevant and focused on your qualifications. So one of the old hazing questions used to be, can you show me how to knock down a wall? Well, that's not really useful, and not really a useful examination of a candidate. So they're there to call it out of order. But somebody may ask questions that have to do with your academic workload. Now, your GPA is your own business, but if your academic workload is inconsistent, may not necessarily work with the role you're taking on, that's something to take into account. So they can ask about those things, but not things like your GPA. You can always put it forward too. I mean, if you have a great GPA, maybe you want to put that forward. Of course, if you put forward that you have a 4.0, somebody may say, are you prepared to put in the work? Are you going to, GPA? You also may want to be able to address how many units you're taking, for example. That may be, if you want to talk about how you've taken 18 units, so you'll only have to take 12 units or something in order to graduate. It's not a good idea to say, oh, well, I'm going to take an extra year to graduate so I can do this Circle K thing. That's probably not going to impress your colleagues all that much. But you should be prepared to answer questions. You should work with your campaign committee to practice fielding questions. The questions, when somebody is running for lieutenant governor, those questions can only be asked by someone from his division. But for the district-wide or the endorsement slots, they can be asked by anybody, by anybody by any Circle K in the room. The questions, no questions can come from Kiwanians or the visiting other Kiwanis family members. So the caucusing is an important part of showing your accountability to your constituency. However, if this is something that you're really scared of, then practice is probably the best way to deal with that. And I will say that I've seen people really bomb in caucus and still get elected. A couple other things that you need to keep in mind. In order to get elected, there is no opportunity for a no confidence vote. As a matter of Kiwanis international policy, that is not recognized. However, in order to get elected, you must have a majority of the certified delegates to get elected. So if the House of Delegates has 100 certified delegates, 20 people go upstairs to take a nap, and so there are only 80 people voting in the House, the person who's running for a district-wide position still has to get at least 51 votes in order to win. If somebody runs for lieutenant governor and there are 21 people voting in that election and the person only gets 5 votes, they don't get elected. It's not a no confidence vote. They simply haven't gotten a majority vote in order to get elected. So you have to have a majority vote of the certified delegates, whether they're present in the House or not. And that has impacted elections in the past, so it's important for us to make sure we do that with some diligence. The other thing that I want you to keep in mind is how you dress. So when we go to opening session, most everybody wants to show up in spirit attire, which is totally fine. However, at the end of the opening session, you'll be introduced as a candidate if you filed your paperwork in advance. So first of all, it's worth getting your paperwork filed in advance to get introduced in that moment. Otherwise, you lose out on that opportunity for that visibility. But that also means that at that point, you may want to be in more professional attire. In addition to that, you will proceed directly from the opening session to the candidates meeting and then directly to caucuses, so there's no time to change clothes. So there's no requirement of being in business attire for caucusing, but if you're not in business attire, it makes people think that you're not really taking your candidacy seriously. So it's a good idea to plan to be in business attire for the opening session and for the rest of Friday evening as part of putting yourself forward for your candidacy. Of course, business attire is required for everybody on Saturday. And then if you get elected, we have a rehearsal on Sunday morning at 8 o'clock in the morning. And part of the reason for that rehearsal, sorry, I'm having a national flashback, an orderly transition of power. It's actually to just make sure that we all look like we're organized and we know what we're doing. And so we have a rehearsal at 8 o'clock in the morning on Sunday that's mandatory. And we do the rehearsal. And so when new board members are installed, they're expected to be in business attire. So as you're thinking about district convention, you may recognize that what this may mean for you is that what you're going to pack in terms of clothes may be substantially about business attire for the weekend in order to make sure that you're appropriately dressed for Friday night's introduction and caucusing, for Saturday during the day. Saturday night is, dressy and then followed by casual for the dance or whatever. And then business on Sunday for that purpose. You may also want to anticipate that you're going to want to change clothes for traveling after we get done. If you are elected, then after the closing session is over, at 1:30 there's a transitional board meeting, which involves the retiring board and the incoming board. The retiring board member will be a short transitional board meeting. Then we will start the education session, and it starts with the retiring board members having an opportunity to spend a few minutes with the incoming board members and maybe their regional advisors talking about what tips and things like that. We then excuse the retiring board members. They go off and have lunch somewhere or whatever. And the incoming board members and the Kiwanians that remain will have lunch together and then do some of our, here's what you need to do for the next 6 weeks until DOTSI kind of stuff. So that's the plan. So I have talked and talked and talked, and I didn't get to do my polling the way I would have liked. I hope that this has been helpful to you. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me at ckicamille@gmail.com. And Joseph, I want to thank you for helping with the technical aspect of presenting this. I appreciate it very much. And let me know who was here. All right. Thank you and good night.